Hey everybody, welcome to Keyword Crypto. This is Michael, and today I wanted to talk about whether Bitcoin can survive Nano. Yes, the crypto Nano. Yes, Nano shell. Lay it on me. Get it out of your system. Keep going. Are you done? You feel better now? Okay. I will say that right now I do have technically more value worth of Nano in my portfolio than Bitcoin. But I also have more Chainlink because of Chainlink's crazy pump over the last couple weeks. So I just try not to think too much about what percentage of what I hold, just what I hold and why I hold it. So I came across a Twitter thread by a guy named Adam Cochran, who I wasn't familiar with, but all the Nano reply guys jumped on it. Was like, yeah, Adam, you're the best. His Twitter handle is at Adam S. Cochran, Cochran, and I'll link to it in the show notes. But as he kind of pretty much just went after Bitcoin and had a 22 tweet thread discussion or diatribe about why Bitcoin won't work. And I caught myself, being the anti-Bitcoiner that I am, defending Bitcoin in my mind. And I hope that people who listen to this show realize that we're not really anti-anything. We're pro-cryptocurrency and positive about cryptocurrency with serious reservations. We don't want to lose our money. And that's the whole point of the show, is we don't want to lose our money and we don't want other people to lose their money. Obviously, people are going to make bad investments or bad trades. It happens. It happens in Wall Street. It happens in crypto. But we don't want people to lose their money on scams. We want people to be educated about the space and educated about what they're doing with their money. That's just the most important thing. That's literally the whole reason why we started the show. So I kind of went through his thread today, and I found myself writing about 4 pages of notes and thought, hey, this would make a good episode. So he talks about a couple things, and I'm just going to kind of address it point by point. I've got three major points. But mainly he came out and he said that he's questioning if Bitcoin can survive long-term on fees alone once there's no more mining reward. Or once the mining reward gets so small. That's kind of how I took it, where it's no longer negligible and people have to survive off of fees, off of Bitcoin fees for transactions. So he made a couple points, and I'll address them. The first one being energy costs. He says energy costs are too high, and energy will never be free. He's like, yeah, people are like, oh, one day energy is going to be free for everybody. And he's like, well, no, if you have green energy in your house and you've decked out your entire home with solar panels and your own nuclear fusion reactor, all those things are going to cost money. They're going to cost money up front, and they're going to cost money in maintenance fees. And so that's where your energy costs are going to come from. And the first thing I thought of was the people who are being paid to mine right now. So you have people in, I'm not sure if it's North Dakota, wherever they are. They're going to oil fields where people are burning off gas, and they're saying, hey, we'll take that energy off you. And then the gas companies are like, we'll pay you to take it. We'll pay you for burning off this gas for us. We'll give you the energy for free. We'll actually pay you to take the energy off our hands. I'm not sure exactly why I didn't really get too deep into the weeds on when I was listening to this guy talk about it. I I don't know. I'm assuming it probably has something to do with greenhouse gases and trading carbon and trying to become more carbon neutral and selling their carbon to somebody else, or I'm not sure 100% what they're doing, but these guys are doing it in essence getting paid. So their only costs are mining, and if they're getting paid more, if they're getting paid for taking this energy off of oil companies' hands, and it's covering the cost of their mining, then they're pretty much breaking even, and everything they mine is at a profit at that point. And we had Jason on the show, and he talks about how he's recycling tires and this and that, and he's breaking them down to their original parts of like metal and rubber and this and that. And in the process of that, he's using the energy that's created through that the process of breaking down the tire, of separating those materials, and he's using that energy to mine crypto. And then he takes those base parts, the rubber, the metal from the steel belted radials, and he's then selling those things for a profit. So he's making a profit in the process, mining Bitcoin during all that energy transference. So he is a perfect example of how those are two examples of how ideas evolve about how we create energy and what we do with energy and what we do with waste energy. So the idea that our energy costs will never go to zero, I disagree with that, because there's two real world examples that are going on right now that show that you can actually make a profit from all this, not just from selling, but from actually the mining experience itself. And so those are two examples where they could probably, I'm not sure about Jason's 100%, but it sounded like the guys who were being paid by the oil companies to take their burnt off gas and use that to mine, it sounded like those guys were making a profit before they even mined. After they were done mining, not including the crypto that they actually mined. So it sounded like all the crypto they were mining was at a profit at that point. So I'll dig into it more, and if you know more, obviously please correct me, because I want to get this stuff as relatively close as I can to, so I'm not misinforming people. And I kind of got the feeling from Jason, but when I post this, I can check with Jason to make sure, to see at what point he's actually breaking even and at what point he's actually making a profit, just to get a better sense of where he is in that sense. So we have those two examples. So it's we have to assume that 10 years down the road, more of these examples are going to start cropping up. People coming up with these ideas of breaking even, all their costs break even, and then they're left with the actual crypto itself once they're done mining, and that's all for profit. Or they're already making a profit before they even finished mining, and once they have all this crypto, they're making even more profit. So if we get to that point, then absolutely Bitcoin can survive on fees alone. My only concern is, how many people are doing that? How much decentralization can occur that way? And is it just going to get more and more centralized to people? Jason seems to have a pretty big or a small company, but recycling tires. How many companies in the world could actually do that? So how much recycling companies at all can survive off of that? It seems like recycling is getting worse and worse in America because China won't take our recycling stuff, meaning we weren't recycling nearly any of our recyclable goods. We were shipping them all over to China, which, when you're shipping recycled goods to the other side of the planet, it doesn't seem very environmental to do that. So that was just like, I don't know, that just seems like a big facepalm for the recycling community. So I think it's I don't want to say disingenuous, because I don't want to say he's doing it, Adam's doing it on purpose, but I think it's we have to assume it's feasible that profitable mining is going to pop up over the future because it's already happening. So, but that said, I do think there's going to be a tipping point where society is going to frown on wasting potential energy on huge eco-unfriendly projects like Bitcoin, especially when superior tech like Nano already exists. So I reached out to Patrick Luberis, one of my favorite Nano guys, today, and I said, hey, can you run some numbers for me? Because you're smarter about all this than I am, and you have more of this information at your fingertips that I didn't want to spend like 3 hours hunting down all this information, and he's kind of a gold mine for that kind of stuff. So, Patrick, thank you. You're the man. Ran numbers, and we figured out, and obviously check his numbers, check his math. You can reach out to him on Twitter as well. But we figured out that Bitcoin uses 5 million times more energy than Nano for one transaction, and would take 190 days of nonstop Nano transactions to equal one energy, to equal the cost for one Bitcoin transaction. So if I run a Bitcoin transaction, I do one, and it's in a 10-minute block. Let's just say we pay to have it mine in that first 10-minute block, and then we wait for 6 confirmations. I would have to send continuous Nano transactions for 190 days to equal the same amount of energy used in that one Bitcoin transaction. So as Gen Z and all the memes about Greta Thunberg are out there, this is the future. People are getting sick and tired of wasted energy that could be used on something else. So the idea that, it's free energy. People are paying me. I'm mining Bitcoin with this paid energy. I think Gen Z and millennials are going to turn to that oil company who is selling it to the guy to mine Bitcoin and say, hey, asshole, there are all these, cancer research institutes and, I don't know, cancer is just the thing that pops up, but, any disease who could use supercomputers to help figure out these problems at a faster rate. And instead of giving your energy to run these energy intensive supercomputers to try to solve the world's problems, you're giving it to a guy mining Bitcoin that is just getting bought up by Grayscale and the banks. It's now a Wall Street crypto, more or less. How is that helping anybody? That is just continuing the cycle of Wall Street oppression over the middle class. And I think Gen X or Gen Z and millennials are gonna see that and flip out and go on their cancel culture attacks. Some of them, are good that they're doing it. Some of them not so good. But I think finding things like that of companies that are just wasting energy and wasting copious amounts of energy. I mean, 190 days worth of energy when they could just be using Nano instead. I think people are gonna really start to have a problem with that. And it's already happening. We're already seeing there's already that tipping point, and I think it's the kind of thing like you got to either get on board quick and try to make money on the new direction we're going, or try to paddle against the ship, the direction the ship's going, and try to drag us back into old, energy-intensive, dirty projects like Bitcoin is right now. I'm not saying Bitcoin's using dirty energy, because there are people using clean energy, but it's just wasted energy. There's so much wasted energy in Bitcoin that could be used for really positive things. Okay, so then his second point was rewards from mining. and saying like, well, you're going to have to like either jack up costs, transaction costs to cover the mining, or there were two other ones, and he said, well, the other two aren't going to really work, blah, blah. So I'm just going to focus on the rewards from mining. So his point is rewards are going to have to, rewards from, not from mining, sorry. Transaction fees are going to have to increase drastically. Let me just scroll through my notes really fast just to make sure I'm doing the right thing. Okay, yeah. So I have a hypothesis, and I haven't come across this in crypto Twitter, which is where I unfortunately live most of the time, that we are at the beginning phase of a bell curve in mining Bitcoin. So in my mind, I don't think we've hit the peak yet of the curve, of the bell, and I don't think we're going to be able to survive the peak, let alone the slow going down of the right side of the bell curve. So what do I mean by this? So first off, miners are still investing tons of money in ASICs and mining machines to mine Bitcoin or any kind of proof of work token that work with ASICs. I mean, even Fidelity last year announced or admitted that they, had created a mining farm in Texas. So people are still doing it. People are still, busting their butt to try to mine as much Bitcoin as they can. And Wall Street is buying it up faster than people can mine it. So we're at a point now where average enthusiasts can't compete with high-end investors who want to mine Bitcoin because they're pumping in millions and millions of dollars on miners, and Joe Schmo or Jane Schmain can't do that. So they there's no such thing as mining on your computer anymore. And from what I can tell, Honey Badger, Honey Pot, Honey whatever it is, I haven't heard about them recently, so it doesn't sound like I haven't heard. They haven't been on my radar at all. So I'm not even sure if they're still around. Which was people could donate like very small quantities of their computer CPU or GPU when they're not using it and mine Bitcoin, but I'm not sure if that's still a thing. Especially with DeFi and farming and all that going on right now. So miners are investing tons of money, and average people can't do it. But just like coal miners, they're going to go on without putting up hold on, what did I say? I hate when I can't read my notes and I'm trying to make it fluid and I feel like a complete jackass. Okay, so coal miners are still fighting tooth and nail to keep their mines open, and their employees are fighting tooth and nail to keep their jobs. Why? It's a dirty energy. It makes the people who mine it super sick. It makes the people who use it super sick, like really bad lung, like just lung disease and black lung, and it's the positives no longer outweigh the negatives. Like we're at a point now where we know how much it costs in healthcare costs for people who are around coal and who burn coal for energy. We know the negative effects it has on those regions that are powering out, that they're using coal for our power plants and then send energy to like beautiful California. And so we're like, oh, we have smog over here, but anywhere that doesn't come into direct contact with the burned coal like they do in West Virginia or other areas. We know now just how that the costs it's a loss. We're losing money when you take into account healthcare costs. Not only that, but solar and wind are actually cheaper than coal. And that happened for the first time either earlier this year or last year. So why are they still fighting? Why are coal miners and coal mining operators fighting so hard? Because they have a vested interest in this. They've invested millions and millions and millions of dollars into a way of life and a system that thousands of people are dependent on now, and hundreds of thousands of families are family members are dependent on. And then so we have got coal miners. We have Big Tobacco. Big Tobacco is another one. Big Tobacco actually got in front of Congress and lied. Every single CEO lied. They caught them lying. They caught them doing studies showing just how dangerous tobacco was for people's lungs. They caught them doing fake studies showing that it wasn't bad. Why would they do this? Because they have a vested interest. They've invested, billions of dollars over the course of 400 years creating these farms and these shipping routes and everything. I mean, it's a $1 billion industry, just like coal. And so they're going to fight tooth and nail to stop the paradigm from shifting. They don't want it to shift. So what I think, so miners so then we come into Bitcoin. Now you got people all over the world who have invested millions of dollars in miners. They don't materialize out of thin air. These people worked hard. They took their hard-earned money and they bought mining equipment with it to mine Bitcoin. So they're not going to they're going to do everything they possibly can to keep the system the way it is. They don't want to have bigger blocks. I think that's it. Yeah, they don't want to have bigger blocks. That's why we had Roger Ver's BCH split. They don't even want to have even bigger blocks, which is the BSV split. They want to keep things exactly the way it is because that's what they invested their money into. If you invest $1 million into something that 3 years later falls apart and you didn't have a chance to make all your money back, then that's a massive, massive loss. That was an investment failure. And we can't expect miners, just like we can't expect the coal industry and we can't expect Big Tobacco to, quote unquote, do what's right for the community. It's not in their best interest, short term or medium term. Long term it is if they actually care about the cryptocurrency community. But in the short term and the medium term, it is not in their interest to change the way things are. It's not in their interest to say, wow, you know what? Nano is better. It's faster. It's more secure. It's more decentralized. It uses less energy. Great. Oh, I'm just going to throw away my $10 million of investment in this gigantic mining farm in Iceland, and I'm just going to buy $5,000 worth of Nano and hope that it gets the kind of first mover advantage and limelight that Bitcoin did, and hope that Wall Street buys it up, and hope that I can recoup my millions and millions of dollars lost investment on buying mining equipment for Bitcoin. We can't expect that to happen. People aren't going to do that. So that's where government regulation comes in, and you have to change out. But you also can't just have government regulation come in and say, all right, we're shutting down the coal farms, because that just is a PR nightmare, right? So what the Obama administration did, and not even just the Obama administration, small nonprofits that were working to shut down coal plants, they went in during the Obama administration and they would just kind of under the radar say, hey, this is against code, and they would work through the courts to get it shut down. And they got like 100 coal plants shut down over the course of 8 years under Obama. And then Obama made very, very small changes. The Congress did. Obama doesn't. Presidents don't do anything. Congress does it. So they got a lot of things in place where giving just as much money as they were giving to coal, like in tax breaks to coal plants and gas and oil companies, which we give them hundreds of billions of dollars in tax breaks. If you're unaware, that's the reason why gas prices are so low. You go to Europe, they're paying $4 for a liter of gas. Is that right? Yeah. $2.50, $3 for a liter of gas. Whereas when I just got back from driving cross country, and the cheapest gas I found was in Texas, $1.59 for a gallon of gas. So I'm pretty sure roughly 4 liters equal 1 gallon. That's not right. It's maybe like 3.5. But Europeans are paying between like $2 and $4 for a liter of gas. People in Texas are paying $1.59. And if you use Shell and you use Shell rewards, there's always discounts. I got it down at one point because I used a T-Mobile discount with Shell. I got the gas down to $1.15, $1.24, which is ridiculous. It's 2020 now, and I'm paying $1.24 for a gallon of gas. So at that point, like, there's no vested, like, people don't want to have to be told to go out and buy an electric car when they're getting gas for $1.50 on average. Let's just say $1.75 on average. There's no reason for Jimmy Bob, redneck hillbilly guy, to get rid of his really well-maintained F-150 that works for somebody who lives out in the country. There's no reason to say, hey, Billy Bob, redneck hillbilly guy, you need to get rid of your gas guzzler and go buy a Prius that doesn't help you get out to your campsite where you like to hunt and fish and all that, and doesn't allow you to really bring your dogs and this and that. It doesn't, it doesn't really work with your life. Like, that's ridiculous. And I hate liberals that try to change people like that. Like with guns. Like, I don't care if you shoot guns in the middle of nowhere. I care if you shoot guns in a really compact city like New York or LA, because then that's where people get killed. In Chicago, I mean, how many people in Chicago have died from ricochets or from, somebody missing their target and hitting a 3-year-old girl in a living room? It's just like, that's where guns start to become dangerous. But if you're in the middle of the woods, in the middle of nowhere, 200 miles from the nearest person, I don't care what you have. I don't care what you shoot. I don't want to take away your gun. So I think it's just realistic. Like, I don't want Billy Bob Joe hillbilly redneck guy to have to not be able to get out and hunt and fish and do all the things that he enjoys doing. So we have to think about it in terms of, what's possible, what can we do, what can we push through Congress, what can we push through this. But at the end of the day, the free market always makes things move faster, happen faster. Outside of like World War II, changing over all the factories to build ships and planes, like, that was a feat of nature. I honestly don't think Americans have it in them to do that again. We can't even get Americans to wear masks. Like, I think if we got attacked by a country, we were asked to do that, I think half the country would roll over and just play dead and say, please don't hurt me. That's just my take. And I know I'll probably get shit for that, but I just don't think this idea of American exceptionalism, it's a myth that people are hiding behind so they don't have to work hard anymore. And it's kind of frustrating. But Big Tobacco showed they're willing to perjure themselves in front of Congress to not have tobacco change when it's harming people. Coal companies are doing everything they possibly can to not have to shut down, knowing they're killing their employees and killing all the people around them that breathe the air after burning coal. So we can't expect people who are invested in Bitcoin to give up mining and sign off on changes to make Bitcoin more like Nano or Digibyte or change it to proof of stake. It's not realistic. It's just not going to happen. We have to assume that people are going to act like human beings, like they've acted in the past, and they're probably going to act in the future. So what else? Okay, so we have to assume that as we reach the peak of the bell curve in mining of cost to profitability, we're going to end up with less and less miners as the rewards shrink, because people are going to be like, well, I can't afford that anymore. And it's going to get more energy intensive to mine. Less people are going to be able to afford it, and with less rewards, unless the price goes to like $10 million, eventually we're going to get to this cost ratio where it's just not, we're already seeing it. We have less miners now than there were, 5 years ago. And we have to assume that there's going to be even less in the future, 5 years from now. And some Bitcoiners are even saying, well, yeah, it's going to be all corporations that mine when there's no more rewards. They're just going to mine it. Like, well, why? Why would corporations spend all this money mining and not make any money? They're like, well, it's going to be in their best interest to. Why? Because, tell me why. How does that make sense that corporations are going to do all the mining for free? Because they're at a net loss, unless transaction fees are through the roof, it's not going to happen. So the other thing people say to me is like, well, Lightning Network will fix that. I'm like, well, the only way for Lightning Network to fix that is if you don't have transactions on the blockchain. And people are like, yeah, well, you don't need, your cup of coffee to go on the blockchain. And my response to that is, well, Starbucks does. If your entire business model is small transactions, $5 point of sale transactions to 1,000 people a day, 10,000 people a day, you absolutely need every single one of those transactions to go on the blockchain, and quickly. You can't have a 10-minute wait period for a cup of coffee. And you can't just have it floating out in the Lightning Network. So somebody needs to talk to me and explain that, because that just doesn't make sense to me. Because if I'm a coffee shop owner, I need to know that it's on some kind of blockchain that I can look to and say, that's your transaction, you paid for that, here's your cup of coffee. Because that just, the people who say that just don't seem to understand how business works, and especially small business works. So somebody please explain that to me, because I don't understand that, and I'll be the first one to say that I don't understand why people point to Lightning Network as a way of circumventing 10-minute blocks. If there's no queue, if there is a queue, hour-long blocks, 2-hour-long blocks, a couple day blocks when it was really busy and backed up, and then also fees, like what we're experiencing with Ethereum right now. It's like, how do you avoid those massive fees for a $5 cup of coffee? David Hay, if you don't watch him on YouTube, he's an interesting character. I like watching him. He's testing out all the loan places like Celsius and Nexo and BlockFi. And he tested out BlockFi, and he tweeted out about it that he did like a 7-day or a week or a month-long thing. He put in like $500 worth of Bitcoin, and he made a profit of $20. He's like, oh, great. So $20 in a month or a few weeks or however long it was. And they charged him like 0.025 Bitcoin to pull it off, which cost him $23. So he actually lost money on lending out his Bitcoin to somebody. So it shows that this kind of stuff on small scales just don't work. And you can say, oh, well, that's different, blah, blah, blah. Like, well, no, we're seeing it with Ethereum right now. Like, and people are complaining like these DeFi farmers, they're ruining the network for everybody. So unless you have a second layer solution that can write stuff to the blockchain immediately, great. And we had somebody on. Oh God, I'm so bad about this. Holy crap! Hold on. I am embarrassed. I want to get her name right. Okay, bear with me. Hold on. Go take a bathroom break. Oh crap! I can't even write down the name right in Google search. Okay, pee break, or go wash your hands properly for 20 seconds, or okay, I'm here. Never mind. Come back. Okay, so we had on crap. I'm so bad at this kind of stuff. Okay, we had on where is she? Jing Wang. And she's doing second layer solution on Ethereum and getting really fast throughput. And from what I understood, it's two people handshaking. And so that's great when you have two businesses, two companies that can agree on that kind of stuff. But for small point of sale stuff, I just didn't really see it working out 100%. Because you have to prove that you have the funds, and the funds have to go there. But if you end up not having the funds or something falls through, then the small point of sale, like hot dog stand guy or the shawarma guy, loses the funds. And I can absolutely see small hackers figuring out a way to do that, just because that's how life is. That's how it's always worked. People figure out ways to screw over people, and it tends to usually be the small guy who gets screwed over, not the big corporations, because the big corporations don't allow those things to happen. They just say, oh, no, it didn't clear. You can't leave yet. And you're like, oh, shit, because there's no money there. And then you get caught, and then that's how you go to jail. So I just don't see it working on small scales. Okay, so that's my thing about Lightning Network. And from a mathematical standpoint, it doesn't make sense. And from a scientific standpoint, it doesn't make sense, and it still doesn't really work. Somebody just said they tested it out again, and only 1 out of 4 transactions actually went through. So I feel like it's still in beta at this point. If you're not getting it 100% of the time, or even 99% of the time, it doesn't work yet. And that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. But, Adam, back Blockstream guy, you got to stop saying Lightning Network, because it just doesn't work yet. It's been how long? And you can't try to sell people on Bitcoin under the hopes that this is one day going to work, because that kind of sounds like a Ponzi at that point, or you're just trying to scam people. Because that's like me trying to sell SPF 1000 because one day we're all going to fly and you're going to be closer to the sun and get more burned. And I'm going to be like, hey, you need to buy this stuff now, because, in 6 months from now, it's going to start working. Like this teleportation thing is going to, or, this levitation thing is going to start working, and you need to start using this stuff. I just, okay. So once we get to the back end of the right side of the bell curve and all the mining rewards are gone, so we've mined every single Bitcoin that's going to be mined. And I think technically we'll never, ever even get there, because if you just keep having stuff, it's never going to actually go to zero, because it's mathematically impossible. But it's going to get to the point where it's so small, they've said mathematicians have said it'll just be zero, essentially. So you can't count on the mining reward to actually make any money. So I've hypothesized, and this is in support of Bitcoin, that dedicated mining equipment and mining farms will no longer be needed once mining rewards are gone, because they wouldn't be able to support themselves off the mining fees, or off of transactions alone. I don't think transaction fees can go that high, where where miners can support mining farms. I just don't see that. I don't see corporations footing the bill to keep mining decentralized. I just don't see that, like, taking a loss just because, they're good people. Because no, they're not. Corporations are run by horrible, horrible people for the most part. And we've seen that time and time again for the last 100 years. They only care about making a profit. They don't care how badly you die. They don't care about how short your lifespan is. They don't care about, your kids dying or your kids being hungry. They care about profit, and that's it. And it's a horrible, horrible system we live in, but that's capitalism. And that's the bed we made. That's the bed we got to sleep in. So how do we create new blocks? I hypothesize, and this is in support of Bitcoin, I hypothesize we do it the same way Nano currently does it. So Nano, if you don't know, has little small proof of works. So when I send somebody a Nano, I do a small little transaction first and confirm somebody else's transaction. And the person who receives it does a little proof of work on their phone to receive it. Somebody else's. And so each transaction is doing two different transactions. That's kind of how I understand it. I've had Colin on here and yeah, it's like, I don't want to get too deep into it because I'm kind of like, I don't want to embarrass myself. So, but that's kind of how it is. So, you're doing that on phones, you're doing it on laptops, you're doing that on computers, but eventually you could do that on your refrigerator. You could do it on any kind of smart connected device. Maybe IOTA will finally one day start working. The Internet of Things, and that could be confirming transactions for you. Your TV, anything. So Bitcoin could theoretically survive without miners if you abandoned mining farms, you changed the code, and you allowed, and you said only small computers can confirm transactions and can mine. And maybe, and if you're just getting a small little fee, maybe you're just breaking even. Probably not even breaking even. You're probably like losing a little bit of money, but in the grand scheme of things, like with Nano, it's so small, the amount of money I'm using for the energy consumption on my phone for the proof of work transaction. It would take me years to notice like any kind of costs. I can't imagine that. I can't even imagine it noticing after years if I was using it like a few transactions a day, a few proof of works a day. So Bitcoin could do that. If let's say theoretically every single person on the planet is using Bitcoin for every single transaction. Somehow they get past the 10-minute block thing. Somehow Lightning Network magically starts working, and it's safe and okay, sure. Let's just this we're theorizing here. That could be a way of doing it. You wouldn't need big mining farms to create the blocks. You would have just every single connected computer on the planet doing small little proof of works. That's possible. Kind of like Nano's doing right now. So, but we can't expect small coffee shops. I just keep on going to coffee shops because everybody loves coffee shops. We can't expect coffee shops to accept Bitcoin payments if the transaction isn't written in the blockchain immediately as a proof of purchase when 100% of their business model is small points of sale. It frustrates me when Bitcoiners say, well, you don't need to have everything on the blockchain. Yes, you do. If that's your business model, you absolutely have to have every single thing on the blockchain and quickly. So, okay. So now we're at that point. It's the year 2140. We've figured out a way to immediately change the blockchain so immediately these confirmations are on the blockchain for small business owners and for big business owners like Starbucks. So it's usable. We've convinced miners with major, massive financial incentives to stop mining. And they've changed the code, and they've put their own self-interests aside for the betterment of the world, for the betterment of humanity, because that's what Bitcoin is really about. It's not about number go up. It's about bettering humanity. That's Bitcoin. So it's 2140, and we live in this utopia of a Bitcoin world. And we're doing it all like Nano does right now. 120 years earlier. So, excuse me if I don't hold my breath, and I'll use Nano instead because it's free and fast, and yeah. So this is kind of like a pro Nano. It's a little bit pro Bitcoin, but yeah. So okay. So the third point is the last point. Store of value. Okay. So if Bitcoin ends up being a store of value, it's we're already seeing it. It's going to be the crypto of Wall Street, because they're already buying up more than are being sold, are being created, being mined. And the vast majority of transactions now are happening on centralized exchanges. And I'm going to get a little tinfoil hatty right now. I kind of think Bitcoiners want it that way. And I think they've always wanted it that way. I think like a very, very small few percentage of people did want the revolution. They did want things to change. They did want, the end of the capitalist society. But I think the majority of early investors wanted to tear down the government and build their own government, which was exactly the same, but with them in power. Don't hate me. So these guys, these Bitcoiners, not guys and girls, but mainly the men, they got in early, and I think they just prayed. And because, in 2017, it was such a trope, like, when Wall Street gets involved, it's going to be like a rocket ship. It's going to take out. Like, it was just Wall Street this and Wall Street that, and Wall Street was going to be the savior of Bitcoin. And I was just like, that is the antithesis of what Bitcoin is. Bitcoin was created because Wall Street was screwing over the little guy. And now you want Wall Street to save you by buying Bitcoin that was designed to help the little guy? It's frustrating, the level of hypocrisy in the Bitcoin space. So obviously I've gotten away from the pro Bitcoin stance. So I think actually I'm not going back there for the rest of this. So I'm looking at my notes really fast. Yeah, I don't think I'm going back to the pro Bitcoin stance anymore. So Bitcoiners got in early. They secretly, and not so secretly, they were pretty open about it, prayed that Wall Street was gonna bail them out during the bear market, and Wall Street did. Wall Street was just soaking up. They were just buying up Bitcoin left and right during the last bear market. And I think technically we're not fully even out of that bear market yet. Like I said, Fidelity was mining. JP Morgan buying, Bank of America. I mean, they're all buying. They're all buying Bitcoin, and they're all adding it to their investment portfolio, and they're all acknowledging it. They all finally came forward and said it is now part of our investment strategy, cryptocurrency. So they got in early. They prayed Wall Street would adopt it. And these early Bitcoiners even blocked progress. They blocked change. They blocked progressive change in the Bitcoin code and the Bitcoin chain to make it more usable. They blocked it at every single step of the way. They wanted it to be cumbersome and unwieldy so that only Wall Street would be dumb enough to fall for the Bitcoin narrative. Why else would they at every step of the way fight against change to make Bitcoin more usable on a daily basis? Why would they at every step of the way try to attack any other cryptocurrency that fixed the essential problems of Bitcoin that made it unusable? Not only would they not change their own code, but they went on massive missions to browbeat, to offend, to ridicule, to degrade, to do whatever they could to shut down all the other cryptos, calling them shitcoins, calling them this, calling them that, just like the constant negativity and toxicity in the space, doing everything they possibly can, which reminded me of big tobacco, which reminded me of big oil. Big tobacco going out there and lying to Congress. Big oil actually funding fake science that said, no, burning fossil fuels is not bad for the environment. All those scientists that work at universities for no money and drive Honda Accords, they're all being paid. They're paid to tell us that burning fossil fuels is bad. Don't mind us, the guys driving the Ferraris with the $1 million, with the $10 million mansions, with the 100-room mansions, with the private jets and the private yachts. We're not the ones protecting our investment. We're not the ones telling the false narrative. We're not the ones who have a vested interest in keeping things the way they are. It's those other guys, those guys driving the Honda Civics who live in a 2-bedroom apartment with their wife and kid, teaching at a university. Those are the people who are lying to you. Those are the people who don't have your best interest at heart. You shouldn't trust them. You should trust us. And people fell for it. And this is exactly what Bitcoiners have been doing for the last few years. They keep saying, oh, buy Bitcoin, buy Bitcoin. It's the future. It's the future. They keep telling you Lightning Network's going to work. They keep telling you that corporations will save you, that they'll start mining it for free, so you don't have it, and it'll keep fees low. They keep telling you that all these things will be fixed in the future, magically. Magic. I'm going to insert a magic meme right here. So, and then on top of that, all these people who are telling you that, what are they doing? They're building centralized exchanges. The good old Winklevi twins. CZ. Coinbase. Centralized, all with, well, not CZ, but not Binance, but all the rest with massive fees involved. Even Cash App has fees, massive fees now. They didn't have them before. What else? Robinhood. Okay, well, that's a whole other story. So I won't include Robinhood, and I'm pretty sure you can't even pull it off. I'm not 100% sure about Voyager either. So, but we'll stick with the major. But those are both centralized as well. So they've been pitching us this narrative that it's all going to magically change the future while creating the past. They're selling us on this magic future while rebuilding a new financial system that is exactly like the old one, only they're the ones in charge. So how is that different? So why should we listen to them when they're the ones who have a vested interest in keeping things exactly the way they are? And they've been telling us from the beginning, oh, we're going to break up the banks while they become the new bank. So it's that whole kind of thing of like 3-card Monty, like where's the card? Blah, blah, blah. Like they're telling you, like you go to the casino knowing that you're probably going to lose. Yet people are still doing it. People are still supporting Coinbase. People are still supporting Bitcoiners. And they're just falling for this thing because they just, they want to believe that if they put $10,000 in Bitcoin, it's going to somehow change the future and make them millionaires. Okay. Cool. So by keeping fees pretty high comparatively to like something like Nano, which has no fees at all, Bitcoiners have created an ecosystem that can only work with centralized exchanges covering the fees to move Bitcoin around. Because remember in 2017 when it was costing $50 to move our Bitcoin off exchanges? And so someone would buy $25 of Bitcoin once a month and try to move it off the exchange and be like, you don't have enough money to move it off the exchange. And you're like, what the fuck? I just put $25 in there. Like, oh yeah, it's going to cost you $47.50 to move it off the exchange. It's just like the whole BlockFi thing that David Hay experienced. Unless you're dealing with millions and millions of dollars worth of Bitcoin, it's not cost effective to move your Bitcoin around. So it's now a store of value. So unless you're buying $10 million worth of Bitcoin or $50,000 worth of Bitcoin, it's cost prohibitive to move it onto a device that you own so you can protect it with your own keys. Which I think that's what Bitcoiners want. So they keep fees high, forcing you to keep it on their centralized exchange. And then at that point, if all the centralized exchanges are talking to each other, they don't even need to move the Bitcoin around because you don't have access to their database because it's just a database. So I could be moving Bitcoin from Coinbase to Huobi, and they could just handshake. And they could say, Huobi could say, hey, Coinbase, he just moved $50 worth of Bitcoin over. It's going to cost $1.50, or it's going to cost whatever, because exchange to exchange, we don't charge people for that. If you send it to another big exchange, we'll waive the fees. Coinbase Pro does that. I mean, Coinbase Pro does it to anything. You can, there's still ways around it of having to pay fees for that kind of stuff. But I could see easily in the future of so I think Tron does this, where if you send it to another Tron wallet, it's free. That doesn't work because they're all Tron wallets. What was it? Somebody said if you send it to like XRP or something like that, if you send it to another similar wallet, it's free. And you can avoid all the fees or something like that. So I could easily see that in the future being like, if you use our ATM, it's free. You don't have to pay for it. It's free banking, and if you keep a certain amount of Bitcoin in the exchange, you don't have to pay any rental fee or anything like that. I mean, banks did it forever. Banks were charging for checking accounts. They were charging people to hold money and then using that money to invest and make profit off of it. And then people finally became wise to it and were like, why am I giving you money when you just turn around and loan it out to other people and make a ton of money off of it? Why am I paying you? You should be paying me. And so they started doing that. It's people got wise to it. But right now, so like if Binance owns 10% of Bitcoin and Huobi owns 10%, and I want to send over half of Bitcoin from Binance to Huobi, they can just send over Nano instead and tell me I have half of Bitcoin in my new wallet in Huobi. Because if they both own the money in their own wallets and they're just kind of plugging it into people saying, oh, you own this now. But you don't really own it. They own it. It's their money. And if you want to send it over, then, if you're sending it to a private account, then all of a sudden it takes, a decent amount of time. So I just don't trust Bitcoiners who have a vested interest, when so like Mario's a great guy, but when we were talking, it's just like I'm taking everything he says with a grain of salt because he works for a Bitcoin company. He has a vested interest in seeing Bitcoin become successful. That's his paycheck. That's how he gets paid. That's how Adam gets paid. That's how these people have invested time, energy, and money into making this successful, and it's still not working. So then they have to start doing other things. Well, store it in here, and then we'll loan it out to people, and we'll turn it into US dollars and loan out US dollars to people, and then give you a percentage. You can earn interest on your Bitcoin. It's like, then you're not like, what's the point? Seriously, we could use rocks at that point. We could use digital crypto kitties at that point. Like, if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. So if it's not, okay. I get a little frustrated. It's okay. But at the end of the day, centralized exchanges, there's no security because you don't own the Bitcoin at that point. You don't own the cryptocurrency because you don't have the keys. And you don't really have any proof that they have the funds. As we've seen with BitGrail. BitGrail did it. They didn't have the funds. As we saw with Mt. Gox, they didn't have the funds. They're just literally plugging numbers into your account and saying, you have this much money, even though there was no money in your account. It's just zeros and ones. They can make it say whatever they want. They could make it say you have $1 million. But when you go to pull out that money, there's nothing there. Oh, we're sorry. Funds are frozen right now. Because they don't have the money. Or if they do, maybe it's not in their best. Like, how many times during a crash did Coinbase go offline in the last 2 years? I mean, we can count the amount of times on more than one hand. And people kept keeping their money on Coinbase. And I'm like, what are you doing? Like, it's crashing. We want to sell. Stop keeping it on Coinbase, because every time it happens, Coinbase shuts down. They're doing it, obviously, because they don't want you to sell. So you don't have any control over your own money in that situation. Somebody is deciding that you shouldn't sell your Bitcoin and to have a run on the bank, and I assume it's because they don't have enough money in the bank. That's usually why people shut the doors. It's because they don't have enough money in the bank to cover all the deposits. So you have to ask yourself, these people who are early investors of Bitcoin and have built a huge infrastructure based on Bitcoin and cryptocurrency, have spent billions of dollars. You have to ask yourself, what do they have to lose? And what do they have to gain? What do they have to gain by keeping the system exactly the way it is and not allowing something like Nano to flourish, where you can't make any money off of Nano? You can't make any money off of the exchange of Nano. There's no miners fees, there's no transaction fees, there's nothing. So you have to ask yourself, just like big tobacco, just like big oil, why are they dragging their feet on change? Why is Lightning Network still not work? Either it will never work, or just because it's bad technology, or they don't want it to work because they're very happy with things the way they are because they're making money hand over fist. And if you're not the one making the money, you're the one losing the money. So that's why I use Nano. I've got a little bit of money in Bitcoin as a hedge, but I keep it on an exchange because I just don't care about it. I assume it's going to go to zero, or I assume it's going to get hacked, or I assume it's going to get lost. And that's not true. I have a little money on that Ballet wallet. That was actually kind of cool. So, okay, elephant in the room. So some of you may have heard or gleaned from this episode of me by myself that keyword crypto as you know it no longer exists. So JJ and I have decided to part ways as co-hosts. And what does that mean? JJ's doing his thing. He's got this really, really cool app that is in beta or alpha right now. And I could see it revolutionizing the world if you can get it tight enough. So that's great. And when we parted ways, he wanted me to keep the show alive. But in my mind, if you've listened to the show for a while, you know I ramble. And I just go on and on and on. And I don't know. I don't think it's interesting when other people do it. And I don't think it's interesting when one person just kind of talks at other people and like lectures at them, or I don't like, in my mind, I like the idea of talking and somebody questioning me, because I feel like that makes me smarter, because it forces me to either question my own thoughts or hone my own argument. And if I can't hone my argument and make it even more concise and tighter, then maybe my argument isn't valid and I need to question it. And that's just really hard to do with one person. So when I pitched JJ the idea of this podcast, we were sitting having a cup of coffee at a coffee shop. So I had this idea for a crypto company, and I pitched it to him, and he was interested. So we spent a few months on it. We brought in a coder, didn't work out. And we were talking, and I was just like, you know what? And we were talking about crypto. I was like, dude, this is actually just what I want to do. Like, I just want to create a podcast like this. And you and I are both skeptical. Let's just do that. And I mean, if you listen to this whole episode, there wasn't a lot of laughing. And I think the idea of when there's somebody else with me and the other person kind of talks, I start to realize just how ridiculous I sounded, and I start to laugh, or I can make, because I don't take myself too seriously. And we can joke around about stuff, and it's fun, and it's entertaining, and it's light. And I feel like in this episode, I'm just kind of talking shit about Bitcoin. I don't necessarily always want to do that. But I thought this guy's tweet storm, I did want to defend Bitcoin a little bit. But so I kind of feel like a single voice talking about crypto. You can go anywhere on YouTube. You can find a million people who talk about this, who ramble on about it like I just did for the last hour. And I just don't find it very interesting, me personally. It's kind of boring. It feels a little egotistical. It feels a little like I'm holier than thou type thing. And I think it's really hard for me to question. Like I said, it's very hard for me to question my own narratives when there's not somebody next to me questioning me, or somebody on the other end of the line questioning me. So going solo would be hard for me, because in my mind, I mean, here's the other thing is keyword Michael, that was a character for me. And that character has all my same beliefs, but that character was bad cop and JJ was good cop. And I've been bad cop a lot in my life. Like, I was a bartender in New York, and I would be bad cop at this big nightclub, and all the other bartenders hated it because all the customers would come over and bitch them. But I always made the most money in tips, and I always had the highest sales for the night. So they'd be like, God, man, you make all this money. Imagine how much money you could make if you were nice to people. I was like, fucking A, I'd love that, because I don't like being mean to people. I'm not a mean person. I can be mean, but I don't like it. So the next night, I was like, all right, we all got together. I was like, okay, I'm going to be nice to everybody. And they're like, all right, great. We're going to make so much money. Same amount of people. They all made the same sales. They all made the same amount of tips, and we all made $100 less. And I tried to tell them ahead of time, but they didn't, you can't really explain it to somebody until they actually experience it firsthand, is when you have a bad cop, people go to the good cop and bitch about the bad cop. And then I was like, that guy's a fucking asshole. Here's a $20 tip. Don't share it with that jerk. And they're like, oh, definitely. That, he's having a bad day, but I'm going to talk to him afterwards, and I'm going to give him a piece of my mind, and I'm keeping this money. They just put it in the pot with every other dollar. And they all sit at the end of that night, they're like, all right, go back to being the asshole. Go back to being bad cop, because we just make so much more money. But it's draining. Like, I don't like I'm blocked by so many people on Twitter as keyword Michael. That's why I changed my handle to Michael Krupto. Michael Krupto. Just because I don't like being mean. I'm an assertive person, and it can come across mean, but I'm not actually doing it on purpose. That's just kind of how I talk. I'm just assertive, and it comes across as kind of aggressive. So I'm always trying to work on that. But I was being an attack dog for keyword crypto as, Michael the bad cop and JJ was the good cop. And like, I can't be bad cop without a good cop. It just doesn't work. Because you're not a bad cop anymore without a good cop. You're just an asshole. And some people love that. I don't like that. I don't like being. I don't feel good at the end of the day when I go home after being an asshole all day long. So I don't like going on Twitter and just like being an asshole. I like questioning people, and I think a lot of people in crypto Twitter, especially in the Bitcoin community, are way too sensitive and not smart. And so when you question their narrative and they don't have an answer, they just call you an asshole and block you. But then the people who do have an answer and have a vested interest, they're going to push back with a lot of acerbity, with a lot of aggression, because you're now potentially taking food out of their hands by trying to change the narrative that they've built up to feed their family. So that's why coal miners are so aggressive about their jobs, because this is how they feed their kids. So I don't mind Blockstream, aggressively pushing their narrative and trying to create quote unquote FUD about other projects and call everything else shitcoins and Peter McCormick and all those guys, because they make a living and feed families based on the success of Bitcoin. What Bitcoin did would not be an interesting podcast if there was no Bitcoin. If Bitcoin went to zero and Ethereum or Nano was the top one, or Chainlink, would you listen to what Bitcoin did? No, of course not. You would listen to what Chainlink did, or what Ethereum did, or what Nano did, or something about those. You wouldn't search for a Bitcoin podcast if Bitcoin went to zero. So these people have extreme vested interests, and it's very difficult to question those kind of people. And these are the people who need to be questioned, but it's difficult to do that if you don't have a good cop next to you who can take the bullet for you. And I know JJ was getting tired, because I would run up and I would poke the sleeping bear with the stick and poke it and poke it and poke it, and it'd get up and start chasing after me, and I'd run. I'd wake up JJ, go, wake up, bear, and then I'd push JJ outside of the tent, and I'd close the tent, and I'd hide under the covers, and I'd let JJ deal with it. But because that's what a good cop does. That's the role of good cop. You got to handle the pissed off bear after you were the one who poked it and woke it up. So that's why I'm not sure this show can last with one person. Because I think the ethos of the show was two guys questioning things. And I think we had a good rapport. I think we still have a good rapport And, we had the good rapport on the show, and the people who liked the show liked it for that reason. Like, my cousin would be like, "Oh my God, you two are so funny together." So I just don't know if it can survive on its own with just one person. So I don't know. I will say that when we decided to stop doing the show, a huge weight was lifted off my shoulders, because I felt like I didn't need to play keyword Michael bad cop anymore. I didn't have to be mean to people. I didn't have to be aggressive to people. I didn't have to question people. I could just be like, that guy's a fucking idiot, and just move on with my life and not say anything and mute him or block him. And that felt good. And taking the last 3 or 4 weeks off, it felt pretty good. I mean, I still have questions, like in this episode. So maybe I'll do like an episode. Maybe I'll be like Laura Shin. And just like, I subscribed to her podcast for a long time. But, 3 months later, there'd be an episode on my thing. I was like, oh, she's still doing podcasts. Cool. So I felt like she was only doing stuff when she really had something important to say or had a really good guest that she wanted to bring on. So maybe I could do that. So that said, I'm still grappling with how to evolve the show, or if, we just leave the shows up and just let them kind of live their lives as that 2 years in the history of cryptocurrency and the cryptocurrency community. And then people can, listen to it and enjoy it and just say, and think like, hey, those are two nerds laughing about crypto and the absurdity of the crypto community in those 2 years. So for everybody who's been listening, I greatly, greatly appreciate your support, because for a while there, we made every mistake in the book, and it was almost like we were doing everything we could to push, subscribers away. But a lot of you stuck with us, and whatever happens, I really appreciate you. And keep questioning everything. And don't be afraid to question, because the people who are screaming back at you the most are the ones probably trying to steal your money. And you worked hard for that money. And you don't ever need to feel ashamed for questioning something when it comes to your money. Don't ever feel ashamed about that, because people will try to make you feel ashamed. People will try to make you feel stupid, so you will invest, by the seat of your pants and just do it quickly and not think about it, because they want your money. So don't give them your money. It's your money. You earned it. And that's it. Thanks, everybody.